Why no one dare search humans, even in the most secure council chambers. My claws were shaking when the alarm went off inside my own head, not the chamber alarms, not the security system. My personal warning implant, the one that only triggers when I am seconds away from a major political disaster. I stood frozen at the entrance of the obsidian chamber, watching a human woman walk through our scanners, and I knew, with the cold certainty that comes from 40 years in galactic security, that she was carrying something our machines could not see. Her name was Margaret Holloway. She was 63 years old. She wore a simple blue coat and carried a small purse that looked, by every measurement I had, completely empty. Our scanners confirmed this. 3 separate teams confirmed this. The psionic reader attached to the doorway confirmed this. And yet every instinct in my body, every lesson I had learned in my long career, was screaming at me that this human was walking into the most protected room in the galaxy with something hidden on her person. I am Ambassador Vrentak of the Eslith Hegemony, head of galactic security protocols for the Conquered, and at that moment I was about to make the biggest mistake of my career. I raised my hand. Security halted. The chamber went quiet. "Madam Holloway," I said, my voice carrying across the polished black floor, "I must ask you to submit to a secondary inspection." The entire room turned to look at me. I saw the Krellian delegate drop his ceremonial stylus. I saw the ambassador of the floating kingdoms cover her mouth with 3 of her tentacles. I saw my own assistant, a young Eslith named Kor, go pale enough that his scales nearly matched the white marble pillars. You see, in the 12 years since humans had joined the Conquered, no one, not a single soul in the entire galaxy, had ever dared to request a secondary inspection of a human. It simply was not done. It was the unspoken rule of galactic diplomacy. You could question their policies, you could argue with their trade deals, you could even insult their planet's cooking, but you did not search a human. And I had just done exactly that. Margaret Holloway looked at me with the calm patience of someone who had raised 4 children and outlived 3 husbands. She did not look angry. She did not look surprised. She looked, if anything, slightly amused. "Of course, Ambassador," she said. Her voice was warm and gentle, like honey poured over a terrible warning. "Where would you like me to stand?" I directed her to the secondary scanning platform. This was a machine that had cost the Conquered 80 billion credits to build. It could detect a single grain of dust from 50 paces. It could identify any known weapon, any known toxin, any known device, any known substance in the entire galactic database. It had never, in its decade of operation, failed to find something it was looking for. Margaret stepped onto the platform. The machine hummed, lights flickered. Data streamed across my viewing pad. The results came back: nothing. Absolutely nothing. No weapons, no devices, no hidden compartments, no unusual biological readings, according to every piece of technology available to the most advanced civilization in the known universe. Margaret Holloway was carrying nothing but her own body, her clothing, and an empty purse. I should have let her go. I should have apologized. I should have bowed deeply and retreated with what little dignity I had left. Instead, because I am apparently a fool, with a long career behind him and nothing but regret ahead, I asked her to Open her purse. Margaret smiled at me. It was the kind of smile that grandmothers across the galaxy share when they know something. You don't, a universal smile, a patient smile, the smile of a being who has watched countless young creatures make the same mistake she is about to watch me make. Are you sure, dear? She asked. I am sure, I said. She opened her purse. I looked inside. The scanners had been correct. The purse was empty. I could see the bottom of it. I could see the simple cloth lining. There was nothing inside. Thank you, I began. I apologize for. Would you like a cookie? Margaret asked. And then from the empty purse that I had just looked into with my own two eyes, she pulled out a small paper bag. The bag was warm. I could smell the cookies. Inside they were fresh. They smelled of butter and sugar and something called vanilla that I had learned to love during my years of working with humans. I stared at the bag. I stared at the purse. I stared at Margaret. Where, I said slowly, did that come from? From my purse, dear, Margaret said. I looked in your purse. Yes, you did. It was empty. Was it? I felt my throat click 3 times in rapid succession, which is the S-lith equivalent of a nervous breakdown. The entire chamber was watching me. The Krellian delegate had picked up his stylus and was now writing furiously. Probably a diplomatic report that would end my career. The floating kingdom's ambassador was laughing quietly into her tentacles. Margaret held out the bag. Please take one. Their chocolate chip. I baked them this morning. I took a cookie. I did not know what else to do. The cookie was still warm. As I ate it slowly, watching Margaret close her purse and adjust her coat, I realized something that sent a cold ripple through every one of my 7 hearts. This woman had just defeated 80 billion credits of security technology with nothing but a small empty bag and a smile, and she had done it in front of representatives from 93 civilizations. The worst part was that she had not been trying to embarrass me. She had not been trying to prove a point. She had not even been trying to smuggle anything dangerous. She had simply been carrying cookies for her granddaughter, who was giving a speech to the Concord that afternoon, and our scanners had been unable to see them because humans, as I was finally beginning to understand, do not hide things the way other species hide things. They do not use technology. They do not use psionic fields. They do not use any method that our machines can detect. They use something older, something we have no name for, something that has been built into their bones over millions of years of evolution on a world where they were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the biggest, and had to survive by hiding. I finished the cookie. It was, I must admit, the best thing I had ever tasted. Ambassador Vrentek, came the voice of the speaker of the Concord from the high platform. Is there a problem? I looked up at the speaker. I looked at Margaret. I looked at the empty purse. No, speaker, I said, there is no problem. Margaret patted my arm as she walked past me into the chamber. Good lad, she whispered. I saved one for you for later. Check your left pocket. I did not have a left pocket. S-lith ceremonial robes do not have pockets. We consider them structurally unsound. But that evening, when I returned to my quarters and began to undress, I found, folded into a small hidden fold of fabric that I had never noticed before, and that certainly had not been there When I put the robe on, a single chocolate chip cookie wrapped in a small piece of paper. On the paper, in careful handwriting, were the words for your troubles. Dear, the secret is practice. I sat on the edge of my sleeping platform for a very long time, holding that cookie, staring at the note, and I understood finally that the galaxy had been fooling itself for 12 years. We had built scanners, we had built shields, we had built the most advanced security systems in the history of sentient life. And a 63-year-old human woman had just walked past all of them with a bag of baked goods we could not detect, and she had left one in my pocket without me noticing. The next morning, I requested an audience with the High Council. I had a report to give, a very important report, because I had realized, sitting there, the dark with a cookie I should not have had, that if Margaret Holloway could hide cookies from our scanners, then any human anywhere could be hiding anything, and the galaxy needed to understand what this meant. I did not sleep that night. I sat with the cookie on my desk and thought about every human I had ever met, every handshake, every meeting, every moment when a human had reached into a pocket or a bag and pulled out exactly the thing that was needed. We had never asked how. We had been too polite to ask how. And in that silence, in that politeness, the humans had been quietly proving over and over that they could walk through any security in the galaxy with whatever they wanted. I ate the cookie at sunrise. It was still warm. I walked into the High Council chamber the next morning with my report clutched in my claws and a plan forming in my mind. The plan was simple. I would request permission to travel with the humans to observe them up close, to finally solve the mystery that had been embarrassing our security services for over a decade. The council, after much arguing and 3 separate votes, agreed. I was given 6 months and a small budget to investigate the matter. 2 weeks later, I was aboard the human diplomatic vessel called the Willing Hand, and I was already regretting every choice that had led me to this moment. The first thing I learned about humans, when you live with them instead of merely meeting them at formal events, is that they do not stop. They simply never stop. A Krellian will rest for 12 hours out of every cycle. And GT snorts. And GT, a floating kingdom citizen, will enter a meditation trance for 6. Even my own people, the Sligthai, require 4 hours of stillness to maintain our mental balance. Humans sleep when they can, eat when they remember, and work in bursts that would kill most species in the galaxy. And the entire time they are carrying things, always, every single one of them, at every moment. On my 3rd day aboard the ship, I met a human engineer named Peter Whitfield. He was a short man with graying hair and wore what he called a utility vest. I asked him politely and with great diplomatic care what was inside the vest. Peter laughed. It was a kind laugh, not a cruel one. He unzipped the vest and began to empty it onto the nearest table. I watched, growing more and more alarmed as the following items came out of that vest in this exact order: a small hammer, 3 screwdrivers of different sizes, a coil of wire, a roll of something called duct tape, which I had heard mentioned in legends, a flashlight, a spare flashlight, a small knife for cutting food, a different small knife for cutting other things, length of string, a folding tool with 11 separate functions, a granola bar, a different granola bar, a packet of dried fruit, 2 pens, 1 pencil, a small notebook, a folded paper map of the ship, a magnifying glass, a whistle, a compass, a small mirror, a spool of fishing line, even though we were nowhere near any water, a packet of salt, a packet of sugar, a tea bag, a spare tea bag, a photograph of his wife and children, a small plastic toy that made a squeaking sound when pressed, 3 different types of batteries, a small roll of bandages, medical tape, needle and thread, a tiny bottle of oil for squeaky hinges, and finally, at the very bottom, a second vest identical to the one he was currently wearing. "I like to be prepared," Peter said. I could not speak for several minutes. The vest, when empty, looked no different from how it had looked when full. It did not sag, it did not bulge. It did not seem to have pockets large enough to hold even a quarter of what had just come out of it. I measured it later secretly. The vest had 17 pockets. Together they had a total volume of perhaps 2 L. What Peter had taken out of it filled an entire table. This, I began to understand, was not unusual. This was normal. This was a regular Tuesday for Peter Whitfield. I started taking notes. I followed humans around the ship, watching what they carried, asking questions when I could, trying to build a picture of this phenomenon I was observing. The ship's cook, a large woman named Helen Brightwood, carried at all times a small cloth bag she called her kit. I asked to see it. She opened it. Inside were 17 different spices, each in its own small container, a sharpening stone for her knives, 3 wooden spoons of different sizes, a small thermometer, a roll of parchment paper, and a tiny bottle of what she called vanilla extract, which was apparently more valuable than gold. The ship's doctor, a tall, thin man named Oliver Kensington, carried a medical bag that I swear was bigger on the inside than the outside. I watched him pull a full set of surgical equipment out of it, use it to perform minor surgery on an injured crew member, clean everything, and put it all back. The bag never changed size. It never looked fuller or emptier. It simply contained whatever he needed, whenever he needed it. The ship's captain, a woman named Vivian Prescott, carried a small leather wallet. In her back pocket, I asked her what was in it. She said, "Everything I need." When I pressed her, she opened it. Inside was a single credit chip, photograph of her grandmother, and a folded piece of paper that, when unfolded, turned out to be a full map of the ship's electrical system, hand-drawn in careful pencil. "That was folded very small," I said. "It was," she agreed. "I do not understand how something that large could fit into something that small." Captain Prescott looked at me with the patient expression I was beginning to recognize from all human interactions. "Ambassador," she said, "have you ever tried to fold a piece of paper?" I admitted that I had not. Clears throat. "Sligtha do not use paper, we use engraved tablets." "That explains a lot," she said. She handed me the map. It was the size of a small blanket. Then she showed me how to fold it corner to corner, then in half, then in half again. Then a special fold she called the map fold, which I could not quite follow. Within 30 seconds, the map was the size of a coin. She handed it back to me. I unfolded it. It was the size of a small blanket again. I folded it the way she had shown me. It became the size of a coin. I stared at the coin-sized map in my claws. This, I said slowly, is not possible. It's just folding, Captain Prescott said. My people do not fold. Well, maybe you should start. I kept the map. I practiced folding it. I could not get it quite right on my own, but I kept the map anyway. It seemed important. That evening, I had my first real conversation with Margaret Holloway. She was on the ship as part of the diplomatic team since her granddaughter was one of the junior ambassadors. I found her in what the humans called the common room, sitting in a comfortable chair, knitting something complicated out of red yarn. Mrs. Holloway, I said, may I ask you some questions? Of course, dear, sit down. Would you like some tea? I do not see any tea. She reached into a small bag beside her chair. She pulled out a thermos, 2 cups, a small pot of honey, a tiny bottle of milk, and a plate of small cakes. Where, I asked, did those cakes come from? From my bag, dear. Your bag is very small. Is it? I watched her pour the tea. The cakes were still warm. I did not understand how this was possible, but I was starting to suspect that understanding was not the point. Mrs. Holloway, I said, I need to ask you how you hide things. She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were very kind and very sharp at the same time, which I had learned was a common trait in older humans. Ambassador, she said gently, we do not hide things, we simply carry them. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have. But how do your pockets and bags hold so much? They hold what we put in them. But the physics of it. Dear, she said, setting down her knitting, let me tell you something. I have raised 4 children. I have buried 2 husbands. I have survived 3 wars, a famine, a flood, and a very bad stretch of weather in 2040, one that we still do not talk about. In all of that time, I have learned one thing. When you need something, you should have it. When you do not need it yet, you should still have it. When you may never need it, you should probably have it anyway. This is not magic. This is just being prepared. But the bag, it's a bag, dear. It holds things. That is what bags do. I tried a different approach. Mrs. Holloway, is it possible that humans have some kind of ability that other species do not, something that lets you carry more than should be possible? She smiled. I do not think so. I think we just practice. Practice what? Packing, folding, arranging, making space. It is an old art. Most humans learn it from their mothers and grandmothers. It is one of those things we do not think about because we have always done it. I finished my tea. I ate a cake. It was delicious. Margaret went back to her knitting. Mrs. Holloway, I said, may I watch you pack a bag sometime? Of course, dear. Tomorrow morning, if you like. I need to prepare for our stop at the trading station. I agreed. I went to bed that night and dreamed of bags that never emptied and pockets that went on forever. I woke up at dawn and went to Margaret's cabin with a notebook. What I saw that morning changed my understanding of humans forever. She had a single suitcase open on her bed. It was not a large suitcase. By my measurement, it had a volume of perhaps 40 L. Into this suitcase, over the course of 1 hour, she packed 12 changes of clothes, 3 pairs of shoes, a full set of toiletries, her knitting supplies, a small library of books, enough food for a week, a first Aid kit, 3 wrapped gifts for people she planned to meet, a small set of cooking supplies for emergencies, a folded raincoat, a folded warm coat, an umbrella, a small pillow, a blanket, a photo album, and finally, to my absolute amazement, a complete set of what she called her good china, 6 plates and 6 cups, each wrapped carefully in cloth. When she was done, the suitcase closed easily. It did not bulge, it did not strain, it looked exactly like a normal, half-full suitcase. I asked her to open it again. She did. I looked inside. Everything was still there, neatly arranged with space left over. Mrs. Holloway, I said carefully, I do not understand what I just watched. She smiled at me and patted my shoulder. That is all right, dear, she said. You are not supposed to. And I realized with a chill that went down my spine all the way to my tail that humans had been doing this to us for 12 years, and they knew we did not understand, and they had decided to be polite about it, and the entire galaxy was quietly pretending that everything made sense when nothing did. I wrote in my notebook that evening, they clear's throat are not hiding anything from us. They are hiding nothing from us because we cannot see what they carry even when they show us. 3 weeks into my voyage, I witnessed an event that I still cannot fully explain, and I have reviewed the recordings more than 100 times. We were docked at a neutral trading station called Beacon Point. The station was old, large, and filled with travelers from every civilization in the known galaxy. It was also, I discovered, full of trouble. The humans on our ship had gone ashore for supplies. I went with them because by this point I had learned that the most interesting things happen when you are simply walking beside humans and watching what they do. I had taken to carrying a small notebook at all times, just like they did, though mine was always empty while theirs somehow never were. We entered the main market. It was crowded, bright lights, strange smells, the noise of 100 languages being spoken at once. I stayed close to Margaret and a human man named Gregory Ashford, a diplomat, who had been assigned as my guide for the day. About 20 minutes into our walk through the market, a small human child became separated from her family. I noticed her. First, she was perhaps 4 years old with curly brown hair and a yellow dress, and she was crying quietly in the middle of a busy walkway. Before I could even point her out, something remarkable happened. Every single human in the vicinity noticed her at exactly the same moment. I am not exaggerating. I was watching carefully. 1 second, the humans around us were going about their business, walking, talking, shopping. The next second, without anyone saying a word, without any visible signal, every human adult within a radius of perhaps 50 m stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to the child. Margaret was already moving, so was Gregory, so were 3 other humans I did not know from different groups who had also been nearby. Within 10 seconds they had formed a loose circle around the child, not too close, not threatening, but making sure no one else could reach her until her family was found. Margaret knelt down. She reached into her bag. She pulled out a small stuffed animal that looked like a rabbit, a packet of juice, and a clean tissue. The child took all 3 and stopped crying almost immediately. "What is your name, sweetheart?" Margaret asked. "Lily," the child said. "That is a lovely name. My name is Margaret. Can you tell me your mother's name?" Susan. And what does Susan look like? She has yellow hair like mine, but bigger. Margaret looked up at Gregory. Gregory nodded once and walked into the crowd. Within 3 minutes he was back, leading a frantic woman with yellow hair who burst into tears when she saw her daughter. The reunion was full of hugging and apologies and thank yous. How, I asked Gregory afterwards, did you find the mother so quickly? He shrugged. I just looked for someone with yellow hair who was panicking. But there are thousands of beings on the station. Yes, but only a few humans, and only one of them was running in circles and screaming a name. I nodded as if this made sense. It did not make sense. There had been no announcement. No one had called for the mother, and yet every human on the station had apparently become aware of the situation within minutes, because when we walked back through the market, I could see that the story was already spreading in quiet whispers, human to human, without any visible communication. Gregory, I said, how did all of you know at the same time that the child was lost? He thought about this. I am not sure. We just did. Is this a human ability? I do not know if I would call it an ability. We just watch out for children. All humans do. It is just something we do. Even children who are not your own. Especially children who are not our own. Someone else's child is still a child, and a lost child needs help. I wrote this down in my notebook. I was beginning to understand that humans had abilities that were not listed in any galactic database, small abilities, quiet abilities, the kind of things that do not show up on scanners or in reports. But the real event of that day, the one that truly changed my understanding, happened an hour later. We were in a different part of the market looking at spices when I heard raised voices. A group of about 10 beings, all of them large and armed, had surrounded a smaller being, a young floating kingdom citizen who appeared to be a merchant. They were demanding something from him. Credits, I think, or goods. Their intent was clear. They were going to take whatever they wanted, and the young merchant had no way to stop them. I froze. I am a diplomat, not a warrior. My role in such situations is to find station security and report the incident. Margaret did not freeze. Neither did Gregory. Neither did the other humans around us, who had all apparently noticed the situation at the same moment, just as they had noticed the lost child. What happened next I will describe exactly as I saw it. Margaret, a 63-year-old human grandmother, walked directly toward the group of armed beings. She did not run. She did not seem afraid. She walked with the calm, steady pace of someone going to buy bread. "Excuse me," she said loudly. "Excuse me, please. I am looking for my grandson. He's about this tall and he has gotten lost. Have any of you seen him?" The armed beings turned to look at her. They were confused. This small human woman was acting as if she had not noticed what they were doing at all. "Go away, old one," the largest of them said. "We are busy." "Oh, I am sorry to bother you," Margaret said, "but I am really very worried. He has been gone for almost an hour." As she spoke, she stepped closer, and as she stepped closer, I noticed several other humans were also stepping closer from different directions, forming a loose half circle around the group. None of them were running. None of them were drawing any weapons that I could see. They were all simply walking calmly. toward the situation. Gregory was one of them, a human trader. I had never seen before was another. Tall human woman in a blue coat was. Another, an older human man with a cane. Was another. Within perhaps 20 seconds, 8 humans had surrounded the group of 10 armed beings, all of them pretending to be interested in something else. The armed beings began to realize what was happening. They could not tell how many humans there were. They could not tell who was armed. They could not tell if the humans were actually a threat or if they were simply nearby. And GT snorts. And GT, the humans had not done anything threatening. They had not shouted. They had not made any aggressive gestures. They had just very quietly and very politely made themselves present in a way that could not be ignored. The leader of the armed group looked at Margaret, then at Gregory, then at the human man with the cane who was standing very still and smiling slightly, then at the woman in the blue coat who was examining a piece of fruit with great interest. "This is not your business," the leader said. "Oh, of course not," Margaret said. "Kindly, I was just looking for my grandson, but now that I look closer, it seems this young merchant might also be having a difficult day. Is that right, dear?" The young floating kingdom merchant who had been frozen in place slowly nodded. "I see," Margaret said. "Well, that is very sad. Perhaps we should all take a moment and think about how we would feel if we were the ones being troubled. I am sure these kind gentlemen would not want to cause any trouble, would you?" The leader looked around. He counted the humans. He counted his own people. Numbers were almost equal, but he could not tell what the humans were capable of. He could not tell what they were carrying. He could not tell if the small woman with the kind smile had something in her bag, or if the man with the cane actually needed the cane, or if the woman in the blue coat was holding something inside her coat. This, I realized, was the great power of humans. They could not be read. They could not be measured. They could not be understood by simple observation. Humans standing quietly might be completely harmless, or might be a trained soldier holding 3 weapons. You could not see, or might be a grandmother with cookies, or might be all of these things at once. The leader made a choice, a wise choice. "In my opinion, we were just leaving," he said. "Oh, what a lovely idea," Margaret said. "Have a pleasant day." The armed group walked away. The humans watched them go. When the group was fully out of sight, the humans all went back to what they had been doing before, as if nothing had happened. Margaret turned to the young merchant. "Are you all right, dear?" "Yes," he whispered. Thank you, thank you." "How did you know to help me?" "Oh, we saw what was happening. We always see what is happening. But you did not fight them. Fighting is usually a mistake, dear. Better to just stand near someone who needs help and let the other side think about what might happen. Most trouble solves itself when enough people are watching." I stood there watching this exchange, and I felt something shift deep inside me. I had just witnessed humans using a skill that no scanner could detect and no report could describe. They had coordinated without speaking. They had threatened without threatening. They had protected someone simply by being present in the right way. And the most remarkable part was that none of them seemed to think they had done anything special. Ambassador Gregory said to me as we walked back to the ship, "You look troubled." "I am trying to understand what I just saw." "What did you see?" "I saw 8 humans stop a crime without saying a single threatening word or raising a single weapon. I saw you communicate without communicating. I saw your entire species become suddenly aware of a single problem and solve it. Together, without plan, without leader, without signal. Gregory was quiet for a moment, then he said, "We're pack animals, Ambassador. We do not always look like pack animals. We often pretend we are not, but when one of us is in trouble or when someone weaker is being hurt, the pack remembers itself. It is very old, older than civilization, older than language. It is just there in our bones. Is it only for humans? It is for anyone who needs it. We do not check species when we help, we just help." That night in my cabin, I sat for a long time with my empty notebook. I had filled it with observations, measurements, attempts to understand. None of it captured what I had seen. You cannot measure a pack. You cannot scan the quiet agreement between strangers. You cannot detect a species that decides silently that it will not allow something to happen. I wrote one final line on the last page. It said, "The humans are not dangerous because of what they carry. The humans are dangerous because of what they are." And then I closed the notebook and sat in the dark thinking about grandmothers and cookies and maps that folded into coins, and I understood that everything I thought I knew about security was going to have to change. The next morning, I requested a private meeting with Captain Prescott. I had questions and I needed honest answers. And I had decided that politeness was no longer going to protect me from the truth. The captain received me in her small office on the upper deck. She offered me tea. I accepted. "Captain," I said, "I need to ask you something difficult." "Ask," she said. "I have been observing your crew and your passengers for several weeks now. I have seen things I cannot explain. I have seen your people carry impossible amounts of supplies. I have seen them coordinate without speaking. I have seen them defeat our scanners with nothing but empty bags and old purses. I have seen them protect strangers without being asked, and I believe there is something about humans that the rest of the galaxy does not understand." Captain Prescott sipped her tea. "Go on." "My question is this: if a human wanted to bring something dangerous into a secure location, could they?" She set down her cup very carefully. She looked at me for a long moment, then she sighed. "Ambassador Vrentek," she said, "I like you. I have liked you since you came aboard. You are a careful creature and a good thinker, so I am going to give you an honest answer. Yes, a human could bring absolutely anything into any secure location in the galaxy. Anything. A weapon, a device, a substance. Anything." My scales chilled. "How?" "Because your scanners look for what they expect to find, and humans know how to not be what is expected." "Can you show me?" She thought about it, then she stood up. "Come with me." She led me to the ship's small training room. She asked me to wait outside. I waited for about 5 minutes. When she invited me back in, she was standing in the center of the room, wearing a simple gray uniform. She had nothing in her hands. Her pockets looked empty. She was not wearing a coat or vest or bag of any kind. "Ambassador," she said, "I'm going to show you something. I ask that you do not report it to anyone. This is between you and me as a matter of trust." "I will not report it," I said, and I meant it. She smiled, then she lifted her right arm from somewhere on her person, Though I was watching her closely, she produced a small knife. It was not a large knife. It was about the length of my smallest claw, but it was sharp-ended. It was real, and it should not have been able to be on her body without me seeing it. She placed the knife on the table. Then she produced another knife from a different location, and another, and another. Within 30 seconds she had placed 11 knives of various sizes on the table along with a small metal tool I did not recognize, a coil of thin wire, a folded piece of fabric that opened into a complete map of Beacon Point Station, 3 small devices I could not identify, a photograph of a child I assumed was hers, and a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in paper. Captain Prescott, I said, your uniform has no pockets. It has pockets. I examined it just now. It does not have pockets. It has pockets that you cannot see. Small ones in the seams, in the lining, hidden inside the hidden. This is an old human art, ambassador. It is called tailoring, and it has been used by our kind for many thousands of years. Mothers hide money from bandits in it. Children hide candy from parents in it. Soldiers hide maps from the enemy in it. Grandmothers hide cookies in there. Purses with it. It is not magic. It is simply very old knowledge that we have practiced and practiced until it became part of who we are. I stared at the collection on the table. You carry all of this every day. I carry what I might need. This is the captain's basic set. A soldier would carry different things. A doctor would carry different things. A cook would carry different things. Every human carries something most of the time. What we carry is harmless. A tissue, a snack, a small gift for a friend. But sometimes what we carry is not harmless. And you cannot tell which is which. You never could. You never will. Why are you telling me this? She sat down. She looked tired. Because I have been watching you too, Ambassador, and I believe you are one of the few you in the galactic leadership who is trying to understand instead of control, and I want to give you a piece of advice from one honest person to another. Please, do not try to stop us. Do not try to search us. Do not try to scan us or measure us or know us. You cannot. The galaxy has tried for 12 years. You have failed. You will always fail. And the only reason you have not had any serious incidents is because humans mostly do not want serious incidents. We want peace. We want trade. We want to live. We are very dangerous when we are threatened, and very harmless when we are not. So leave us alone and we will leave everyone alone. That is the bargain. It has always been the bargain. And if someone tries to force the matter, she looked at me with those gentle human eyes that I had learned to be slightly afraid of. Then they will learn what I am teaching you now in less kind ways. I swallowed. Captain, I have a difficult position. I am the head of galactic security. My job is to know the threats. My job is to protect the conquered. Then protect the conquered by telling them the truth. The truth is that humans are not a threat unless you make them one. The truth is that you cannot stop us, but you will not need to stop us because we do not want to be stopped. The truth is that every security system in the galaxy is useless against us, and we have known this for 12 years, and we have chosen to be good guests anyway. Out of kindness, out of respect, out of the simple desire to be part of something bigger than our small world. I looked at the table. 11 knives, tools, devices, all carried by one small human in a uniform with invisible pockets, all carried with no intent to cause harm, but with the full capacity to cause harm, if harm became necessary. Captain, I said, why are humans this way? She was quiet for a long time, then she told me a story. A long time ago on our planet, there were creatures larger than us, stronger than us, faster than us, creatures with natural weapons that we did not have. Teeth, claws, thick skin, speed. We had none of these things. We were small and slow and weak. If you had looked at our planet 1,000,000 years ago, you would not have bet on us. You would have bet on the larger creatures. You would have bet on the faster creatures. You would have bet on the stronger creatures. And yet you survived. We survived because we learned. We learned to hide. We learned to prepare. We learned to carry. We learned to make tools and keep them close. We learned to share information and work together. Without always needing to speak, we learned to solve problems before they problems found us. This is not a small thing, Ambassador. This is who we are at the deepest level. We are the creatures that carry things. We are the creatures that prepare. We are the creatures that survive not by being strong but by being ready. And now you come to the stars. And now we come to the stars with our pockets full of the habits of 1,000,000 years, and the galaxy looks at us and sees small soft creatures with no claws and no scales and not much strength, and the galaxy has scanners and shields and weapons we do not have, but the galaxy does not understand that we have been doing this for a very long time. Hiding, preparing, carrying, surviving. Your scanners look for threats. They do not look for grandmothers. And so the grandmothers walk through, carrying whatever they want, and no one notices, and this is exactly how it was on our planet for 1,000,000 years, and this is how it will be in the stars for 1,000,000 more. I sat in silence. My tea had gone cold. Captain, I said finally, I do not know how to write this report. Then write the truth, write it simply. Write that humans cannot be searched. Not because they are magical, not because they have abilities beyond understanding, but because searching a human is trying to catch water in a net. You will never succeed, and the water does not mean you any harm. It simply is what it is. I stood up. I bowed deeply in the most formal Islathian gesture of respect. She bowed back a human bow, a simple tilt of the head. Captain Prescott, may I ask one final question? Of course. What if the galactic leadership does not accept this truth? What if they try to force humans to submit to searches? She looked at me, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes that I had not seen before, not cruelty, not anger. Something older, something tired and patient and ready. And I would advise them not to do that. Ambassador, I would advise them very strongly not to do that, because humans will accept many things. We will accept rules, we will accept limits, we will accept the customs of other species, but we will not accept being treated like a problem to be solved. We did not come to the stars to be handled. We came to be friends. Friends do not search friends. And if the galaxy forgets how to be a friend, we will not retaliate. We will simply leave. And we will take with us everything we have brought: our trade, our technology, our medicine, our art, our food, our stories. And the galaxy will be smaller and colder and poorer without us, and we will go back to our one small planet. And we will be fine because we were fine before and we will be fine again. That is what you tell your leaders if they ask. That is the truth. I left her office. I walked the corridors of the Willing Hand for a long time that night. I thought about what she had said. I thought about Margaret and her cookies. I thought about Peter and his vest. I thought about Helen and her spices. I thought about the humans in the market quietly protecting a stranger with nothing but their presence. I thought about a species that had arrived in the galaxy with 12 years of perfect behavior and infinite capacity, and had chosen every single day to be kind. And I realized that the humans were not the problem. They had never been the problem. We were the problem. The rest of us, we who saw their small soft bodies and thought we could handle them. We who built scanners and searched and measured and tried to understand a species that did not want to be understood but wanted only to be trusted. I wrote my report that night. I wrote it honestly. I wrote everything Captain Prescott had told me to write. I wrote about Margaret's purse and Peter's vet, and the grandmothers and the pockets and the knives I had seen on the table. I wrote about the pack behavior and the quiet coordination and the ancient instinct to help. I wrote about a species that could bring down any security system in the galaxy and had chosen not to out of nothing more than politeness and goodwill. And at the end of the report, I wrote my recommendation to the Conquered. It was a single sentence, the most important sentence I had ever written in my long career. I wrote, we must not search the humans. We must not try. We must instead learn to deserve the trust they have been quietly giving us for 12 years. I signed the report. I sealed it. I sent it by the fastest courier back to the home system. Then I went to bed, and for the first time in weeks I slept well. When I woke up in the morning, there was a small cloth napkin on my bedside table. Inside the napkin was a single chocolate chip cookie. It was still warm. A small handwritten note beside it said, "Thank you for listening, dear. The world is better when people listen. M." I did not ask how she had entered my cabin. I did not check my locks. I simply ate the cookie, and I smiled, and I understood that I had finally joined a small group of non-humans in the galaxy who had learned the only lesson about humans that mattered. The lesson was this: they are not to be understood, they are to be known, and knowing them is a gift they offer quietly to those who stop trying to measure and simply allow them to be who they are. The ship returned to the home system 2 weeks later. I had spent those 2 weeks quietly observing, learning, asking small questions, and being given small answers. I was no longer trying to understand the mystery of humans. I was trying to understand how to live beside them. It was a much more rewarding project. When we docked at the orbital station above the Conquered homeworld, I said my goodbyes. I shook Captain Prescott's hand. I hugged Margaret, who hugged me back, and slipped something into a fold of my robe that I discovered later was another cookie and a small packet of tea. I thanked Peter and Helen and Oliver and Gregory and every human who had tolerated my endless questions over the past months. Then I took the shuttle down to the surface and prepared for the hardest meeting of my life. The High Council was waiting. My report had arrived 2 days before me. They had read it. They had questions, and not all of them were happy with my conclusions. The meeting was held in the largest chamber of the Conquered headquarters. 47 senior representatives from 47 species sat in a great circle. I stood in the center. I gave my testimony. I answered their questions. The first question came from a senior Krellian diplomat named High Minister Talrek. He was a proud being, old and careful, and he did not like surprises. Ambassador Vrentak, he said, am I to understand that your report recommends we abandon all security protocols regarding humans? Not all protocols, High Minister, only the protocols that attempt to search or scan them. I recommend we maintain all other security measures. But if we cannot scan them, how can we be certain they are not carrying weapons into our secure spaces? We cannot, High Minister. And this does not concern you. It concerned me greatly for many years. It no longer concerns me, because I have realized that they could have caused harm at any point in the past 12 years, and they have not done so. They are not hiding weapons in order to use them. They are simply carrying what they carry because that is who they are. Stopping them from carrying would be like stopping a Krellian from wearing ceremonial paint. It is not a threat. It is identity. There was some murmuring. The High Minister was not satisfied. Another representative, a floating kingdom senior named Ambassador Varelian, raised her tentacle. Ambassador, she said with respect, your report reads more like a story of admiration than a security assessment. Have you perhaps grown too close to your subjects? I have grown close to them, Ambassador. I do not deny it, but my conclusions are based on evidence, not affection. The evidence is this: our scanners have failed to detect human-carried items in 97% of all recorded tests over the past decade. Our shields cannot stop them from bringing in materials we do not expect. Our psionic readers cannot read their intent because their intent is not hostile, and our readers are calibrated for hostility. We have spent 400 billion credits on security measures that do not work against humans. I am not recommending we stop being secure. I am recommending we stop wasting credits on a problem that does not exist. A problem that does not exist. The humans are not a problem. We have been treating them as a problem for 12 years, and in that time they have given us more than we have given them. They have shared medicines that saved millions of lives. They have shared agricultural techniques that ended 3 famines. They have shared cultural arts that have enriched every civilization in the conquered. They have caused exactly 0 incidents of harm. 0. Ambassador, in 12 years, can you name any other species in the conquered with that record? Ambassador Varelian was silent. A third representative spoke now. She was a senior Eslith I named Matriarch Zesla, and she was my direct superior. Her opinion would matter most. Vrentak, she said, you are recommending a fundamental change in our security posture. You are asking us to trust a species that our scanners cannot measure. You are asking us to accept that we do not know what they are carrying. This is a very difficult thing to ask. I know, Matriarch, I have struggled with it myself. What makes you confident they will not betray this trust? I thought about this carefully. I had prepared for this question. Matriarch, I do not know if they will never betray our trust. No one can know that about any species, including our own, but I know what they have done so far. I know that when I observed them up close, I saw a species that helps lost children without being asked. I saw a species that protects strangers in market. I saw a species that shares food and tea and kindness with anyone who crosses their path. I saw a grandmother who slipped cookies into my pocket because she thought I looked tired. These are not the behaviors of a species planning betrayal. These are the behaviors of a species that wants to be good neighbors and is quietly trying to show us every day that they can be trusted. The chamber was silent. Matriarch Zesla nodded slowly. And the risk, she said, that we might be wrong. The risk exists, Matriarch. I will not pretend it does not, but I would ask the Council to consider the alternative. If we force humans to submit to searches, we will fail. Our technology cannot see what they carry. We will either have to admit this failure publicly, which will humiliate us, or we will have to escalate, which will anger them. Neither outcome is good. The humans, as Captain Prescott told me, will simply leave if we treat them as enemies, and we will lose everything they bring us. All the medicine, all the technology, all the trade, all the friendship for what? For a security that we never had. In the first place, because our scanners never worked on them, even when we thought they did. There was a long silence. Then High Minister Tauric spoke again. But his voice was different now. Thoughtful, less angry. Ambassador Vrentak, if we accept your recommendation, if we allow humans to move through our secure spaces without search, what guarantee do we have of their continued good behavior? The same guarantee we have had for 12 years, High Minister. Their own nature, their own choice, their own desire to be part of this community. Humans, I have come to believe, are a species that responds to trust with trust and to suspicion with quiet withdrawal. If we trust them, they will continue to earn that trust. If we suspect them, they will stop trying and we will lose them. That is the guarantee. It is not a law. It is not a technology. It is simply the nature of the species. Take it or do not take it, but it is the only guarantee that exists. The council debated for 11 hours. I sat in the center of the chamber and answered questions as they came. Some representatives were hostile, some were curious, some were convinced from early in the day. By the end of the 11th hour, the debate had taken on a different tone. Representatives were no longer arguing whether my recommendation was correct. They were arguing about how to implement it. The vote was taken at midnight. It was not unanimous. 7 representatives voted against, 40 voted in favor. The new protocol was adopted. From that day forward, humans would not be subject to searches in conquered spaces. They would pass through checkpoints like any other species, but their belongings would not be examined, their bodies would not be scanned, their psionic profiles would not be read. They would be trusted fully, based solely on their record. I was asked to draft the public announcement. I did so carefully. The announcement did not say that we had failed to search humans successfully for 12 years. That would have been embarrassing. It did not say that our scanners did not work on them. That would have caused panic. It simply said that the conquered had recognized the exemplary behavior of the human delegation and had decided to extend to them a special status of trusted membership. It was a diplomatic lie in part. The real reason for the change was that we had been defeated by a species that refused to be defeated or to defeat us. a species that had quietly, over 12 years, proved that our entire approach to security was based on assumptions that did not apply to them. A species of grandmothers and engineers, and captains who carried impossible things in impossible bags and used them to help, not to harm. But the lie was also in another way. The truth: the humans had been exemplary. They had earned the trust we were now officially giving them, and the rest of the galaxy would see that trust and would understand in its own way that something had changed. 3 days after the announcement, I received a message from Captain Prescott. It was short. It said, "Thank you, Ambassador. You have done a good thing. The pack remembers. We will not forget." I did not know what she meant by the pack remembers. Not then. I learned later, over the following years, as the new protocol settled into galactic life, I began to notice small things. Humans went out of their way to help members of other species when a Kryllian ship had engine trouble near the edge of human space. A human merchant vessel diverted its entire route to bring help when a floating kingdom delegation was caught in a diplomatic dispute in a neutral zone. A human ambassador appeared quietly and resolved the matter within a day. When I myself fell ill with a Slith eye plague that had no cure, a human doctor I had never met traveled for 3 weeks to bring me a treatment she had developed in her spare time, and she refused payment, and she stayed with me until I recovered. And when I thanked her, she said only, "You helped our people. It is our turn." The pack remembers. I understood finally what Captain Prescott had meant. Humans do not forget. They remember who has treated them well, and they repay that kindness. They remember who has treated them poorly, and they quietly withdraw. They do not keep formal lists. They do not announce debts. They simply remember in the quiet way their species remembers everything, and they act accordingly. I retired from galactic security 30 years after my voyage on the Willing Hand. I was old by then. My scales faded, my claws dulled by time. The new protocols I had helped create were still in place. No human had ever abused them. Trade between humans and the rest of the galaxy had grown to unprecedented levels. Cultural exchange was at an all-time high. 5 joint scientific projects between humans and other species had produced breakthroughs that reshaped our understanding of physics, biology, and medicine. The humans were not just members of the conquered anymore. They were its heart. Quietly, without announcement, without demanding recognition, they had simply been present and helpful and good for decade after decade, and everyone had noticed, and no one had said anything, and the conquered had become a better place because of them. On the day I retired, I received a visitor in my quiet home on the outskirts of my species' capital city. She was older now. Her hair was white. She walked with a small cane, but her eyes were the same, and her smile was the same, and her bag was the same small, empty bag that had defeated our scanners so many years ago. "Margaret," I said, "you came." "Of course I came, dear. I could not let you retire without saying goodbye properly." We sat together in my garden. She reached into her bag. She pulled out a small package wrapped in blue paper. She handed it to me. "What is it?" I asked. "Open it, dear." I opened it. Inside was a small photograph. It showed Margaret younger, standing with her granddaughter in front of the obsidian chamber on the day I had First asked to search her. In the photograph, Margaret was smiling at the camera, but her eyes were looking to the side, looking at someone just out of the frame, looking at me. I remember that day, I said. So do I, she said. It was the day the galaxy changed, the day one Eslith I, out of all the species in the Concord, finally asked the right question, not, what are you hiding, but who are you? You were the first Vrentak, the first to try to understand instead of control. We have always been grateful. I could not speak, my throat clicked several times. Margaret reached into her bag again. She pulled out a small paper bag. The bag was warm. I could smell the cookies inside. For your retirement, dear, one for now. The rest for later, they freeze well. I took the bag, I held it in my claws, I looked at her across the small garden table. Margaret, I said, I have always wondered something, and snorts I have never asked because I was afraid of the answer, but I am retiring now, and I would like to know. Ask, dear, do your bags really have some secret inside them, some technology, some human ability we do not know about? She laughed, a real laugh, a warm laugh. She reached across the table and patted my claw with her small soft hand. Oh dear, she said, after all these years you still think there is a secret? Is there not? No, dear, there is no secret. The secret was always the same thing. We care for each other, we carry what we might need, we help when help is needed. We share when sharing is possible, we are kind, that is the whole secret, that is all of it. Your scanners could not find it because your scanners were not looking for kindness, they were looking for weapons, and we were never carrying weapons, we were just carrying cookies and hope and a willingness to help whoever needed helping. That is the secret of humans. It is a very old secret, and it is a very simple secret, and the galaxy could have had it all along if they had just stopped searching us and looked at us instead. I sat in the garden for a long time. After she left, I ate one of the cookies. It was still warm, as they always were. I looked at the photograph. I thought about 1,000,000 years of evolution on a small planet full of creatures larger than humans, and how those humans had learned to carry things and had carried those things across the stars and had brought them to us and had never once used them to hurt anyone. I wrote a final entry in my old journal. That evening, I had been writing in it since the day I stepped aboard the Willing Hand. It was nearly full now. I wrote, I spent my career trying to understand humans. I failed. They cannot be understood. They can only be trusted. And when you trust them, they give you back more than you gave them every time. Without fail, this is not magic. This is not strategy. This is not hidden ability. This is simply who they are. I wrote, if you are reading this and you work in security and you have been told that humans cannot be searched and you are wondering why, I will tell you. It is because searching them is not the question. The question is whether you deserve their trust, earn it, and they will give you everything. Fail to earn it and they will give you nothing, and you will never know what you missed. I wrote, do not search the humans, not because you cannot, because you do not need to. They are not hiding anything from us that we need to know. They are hiding only their infinite capacity to help, and they reveal it the moment we ask kindly, and never a moment before. I wrote, this is the last thing I have to teach about them. This is the only thing that matters. I closed the journal. I placed it on my shelf next to the photograph and the folded map Captain Prescott had given me, which I still could not unfold and refold the way humans did, and the small cloth napkin Margaret had left in my cabin all those years ago, which I had kept because it still somehow smelled faintly of warm cookies. Outside, the stars of my homeworld were beginning to come out. Somewhere among them, humans were traveling and working and helping and carrying things no scanner in the galaxy could detect. And the galaxy was better for it. The pack remembers, the pack is patient, the pack is kind, and the pack in the end is family, all of it, every species, every small life that just wants to be seen and helped and trusted. That is what the humans taught me. That is why no one dare search humans, even in the most secure council chambers. Not because we are afraid of them, because we are grateful for them. And we finally, after all these years, understand that trust is the only security that ever truly worked. The end.